this meeting of the Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality District to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Carr. Cruz.
Here.
Frost. Guerra.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Harris.
Here.
Kennedy. Lee. McGlashan.
Here.
Foley. Peters.
Here.
Cerna.
Here.
Starsky.
Here.
Terry.
All right, great. Do you want to read the statement and then we'll do the pledge?
This meeting of the Sacramento Air Quality Management District is cablecast live without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T Uverse. This meeting is being closed captioned and will be webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will be repeated on Sunday, February 28th at 4 p.m. on Channel 14. Members of the audience wishing to address the board may fill out a speaker form located on the table at the back of the chambers and give it to the clerk. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Also at this time, please silence your cell phones until the conclusion of today's meeting.
Great, thank you. Mr. Toohey, would you like to do the pledge for us? Come down. Yeah.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, Madam Clerk, please call the first item.
First item is the Air Pollution Control Officer's report.
Okay, good morning. First thing I would like to do is to introduce a new manager we have at the district, manager of the land use sections, Paul Philly. Paul, would you stand up? Paul is a graduate of USC Bakersfield, UCLA grad. He's a degree in urban planning, and he's AICP qualified certification. We're very happy to have him here. He's been working at the district for a number of years. He's an internal promotion, and he's really established a record for having a good knowledge of what's going on there, and we're really excited about him being promoted. It was Larry Robinson's retirement, and then Paul was promoted into that position. So welcome.
Great. Welcome, Paul.
As far as the toxics update, I just wanted to let the board know that we will be bringing an item back next month. It's the March annual toxics hotspots report. That we have workshops this month on that, and then we'll be bringing that item back to the board next month. So be on the lookout for that in particular in your board packets next month. Next item is an update on the New Partners for Smart Growth Conference. The staff that attended that conference will be holding an internal meeting to sort of review for us all the lessons learned in various aspects. But I wanted to give board members who attended that an opportunity, if they wanted to say anything about that particular meeting. It's a tremendous conference, and it's always well attended by both the board and the staff here. All right.
Madam Clerk, the next item.
All right. Next item on the...
I was giving an opportunity for board
I thought that
members.
was very quick.
No. In case anybody wanted to make
I was trying to actually make you shorter.
Well, you haven't quite yet succeeded.
No.
Okay. Would anyone like to make any comment about that?
Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, I just want to say it was a great conference, a lot of diversity there, and diversity from as far as jurisdictional diversity from throughout the country, a lot of good ideas cross-pollinating. I actually did, on the tour that I took, actually brought back an idea that I'm going to really try to replicate in District 2 in the county. And of course, it's always a pleasure to be anywhere when you get off of the plane and out of the airport and directly onto a light rail car. So that was it was a great trip and great conference.
Great. Mr. Cruz.
Mr. Cruz was my father. I'm Mark.
Director Cruz.
I have to agree with Mr. Kennedy, although we did start off with a little bit of excitement. That was quickly remedied by our clerk. I really think the city of Portland is a larger version of the community I'm from. I felt very, very clean. The people were very friendly. It was a safe place to be. I got a lot of information from the different breakout sessions, and it's rather interesting to see how other communities deal with the same things we have to deal with.
All right, Mr. Guerra.
I think as both supervisor and council member said, that it was a great opportunity to find experience, not just from our region here, but nationally, and having firsthand opportunity to speak with some of our EPA folks who are administering some of these grants was a unique opportunity, particularly on issues of brownfields and smaller vacant lot areas, which I think is an opportunity we could take advantage of.
And I would just add, I thought that our staff did a great job covering a lot of different workshops. I saw them mix and mingle very effectively, and there were a lot of people from our region there, but as Mr. Guerra said, I think that the conference as a whole, especially from the equity standpoint, covered a lot of ground that is both refreshing and necessary. So thank you for the support from the district to allow us to do that.
Okay. And we very much appreciate the time that all of you took going on that trip. It's very helpful when we have board members who pick up that piece of the puzzle that we do, and then we see those things coming back around in our land use patterns here in the area. The next thing is the 2016 capital to capital trip, which is April the 9th through 13th. We're well into our planning for that. We have 4 of our directors, Directors Cruz, Guerrera, Lee, and Hanson, all on the list for the air quality team. We have our papers in, our appointment and request in. We're well on track. The Valley Vision manages this for us under the Clean Air Partnership and contract, and they do a tremendous job. We will be setting up for those members who are attending and being on the air quality team. We will have a training on our papers, and we usually do that about a week out from the trip. So you'll be getting contacted about that information. We have about 12, 15 people on our team, which is about the right number for us. Usually we'll have enough people to cover 3 meetings at one time, which is sometimes happens on Tuesday. We have to split our team up and have them going all different. You all who are veterans of that know just how frantic it can get Monday afternoon and Tuesday on the trip when you're going a lot of different directions. So we're well on our way to having an excellent trip again. And that is everything I have.
Great. Now, Madam Clerk.
Next item is consent items number 1 through 3.
All right, I don't have anybody signed up to speak. Do any of the consent?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item.
Next item.
I wanted to address item 2.
Mr. Sprague, unfortunately, your comment is out of order because we did not have a speaker slip for you. So there will be. Mr. Sprague. Mr. Sprague, this is our meeting, and there is an opportunity to take public comments on matters not on the agenda later. Well, you've missed. Mr. Sprague, you are out of order.
No, you have to.
Mr. Sprague.
Anyone that wants to speak.
We did not receive a speaker slip, and you are out of order, Mr. Sprague. Mr. Sprague, we will have you removed from the chamber if you don't.
Mr. Carhouse front handles things.
There's no microphone on.
Cronies in here and haul me away. Isn't that right, Larry? Back in 2011, we're on the phone this month.
All right, Mr. Sprague, we're going to have you removed if you don't stop.
Well, let's see.
You will have a chance to speak to the board on matters not on the agenda, but we did not.
How many minutes am I going to get?
You will get the normal allotted time, which is afforded to any member of the public.
What is that?
I believe it's, sorry?
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Last time I was here, you gave me 2 minutes. Isn't that right, John?
We will give you the normal allotment of time,
Which is what?
5 minutes, according to the clerk.
Speaker for?
But if you, I will say, Mr. Sprague, if you act out of order again, we will remove you from the chamber. You've been warned now 3 times, and the sheriff is here.
Oh, good. Have the sheriff arrest me. Yeah, right, Larry. You can, Larry, of course, Larry, tell me.
Mr. Sprague, you've been warned now more than 3 times. Please cease.
Yeah.
All right, Madam Clerk, next
All right.
item.
Next item is item number 4, under staff report, receive and file update on funding received by the Sacramento region from cap and trade proceeds.
For this item, we will have Evan Smet from Valley Vision is going to give you a summary. She's put together a really excellent report, I think, of what's happened with the cap and trade money relative to the state and relative to us. I have put on each of the directors' desk a summary of the 3 projects that we have applied for, one of which we have received funding on, and you can see in that piece exactly the number of vehicles, who our partners are. I will tell you that for the district, we put an enormous amount of time into these projects. For example, the school bus project was about a half a man year of effort for our district, just putting together the packet of materials and the work that we were doing there. So, Evan, you want to go ahead and get started here then?
Hi. Like Larry said, my name is Evan Schmidt from Valley Vision. Thanks for having me here today. I have put together some numbers around tracking cap and trade projects across the state for the 2014-15 round of funding. Valley Vision has been involved in this for a while with the support of the Sacramento Air District, looking at or helping coordinate applications and then also doing project tracking. So this analysis really focuses on the distribution across the state and then taking from that a look at how the Sacramento region did overall compared to other regions. My clicker's not working.
IT to the rescue.
Okay, there we are. Okay, so first I just want to spend a minute and tell you a little bit about where this data came from and what we are able to track right now from the statewide program. As a lot of you probably know, cap and trade funding was funneled through many different state agencies in order to arrive in regions across the state. So there was 12 different agencies that had cap and trade funding, and all of them had their own programs that they administered differently for that first round of funding. And it's similar in the second as well. Some of those programs had a competitive or formulaic process in which they administered funding into local areas, and then others used the funding to expand or continue programs that they were already doing. And so we were able to look at how the funding was distributed in those agencies that used either a formulaic or competitive process to get money into local agencies, and reported on the awardees. So they released that data as to where the funding went. And so you can see the list there, but there's 8 of the programs did release that data, and then there were, in that second sub-bullet point, some agencies that distributed funds but didn't release any data about it. So this analysis is really from those 8 agencies, and we got it by looking on their websites at the data they released. And then there was 2 other agencies that have done maps of the state that show where climate investments are, and that includes cap and trade programs. So we were able to really verify our results by looking on those maps that they created. That also helped us understand the locations of the different programs. So I'm just going to go through a series of charts that look at how money was distributed and looking at it in a few different ways so that we can get an idea of what happened in the state for that last round of funding. So this chart shows the total investment by region. The regions are defined by their NPOs. And I looked at, or these charts really include the top 15 regions that received the most funding. So you could notice that like the North State isn't really represented here just because they had such a small percentage of funding. So the Bay Area and Southern California had by far the most investment in their regions. Both of them were right around $140 million. Here you can see where SACOG region is. We were the 4th, we received the 4th most investment. You also see that multiple regions category that just looks at projects that expanded across different MPOs, like travel or transportation corridor projects and things like that. So the total investment that we analyzed was about $500 million. And you can really see that the Bay Area and Southern California got the most investment, and then more to the right of the chart, you can see a lot of the Central Valley counties that had a smaller percentage, and SACOG is kind of right there in the middle. So this is looking at the same, looking at the total investment again, but looking at it in a little bit of a different way. So if you see the blue bar, that's the percentage of California population that resides within that region. And then the orange bar is the percentage of the total cap and trade investment that that region received in the last round of funding. So just to use Bay Area as an example, you can see that they have a little less than 20% of the state population, and they received close to 30% of the cap and trade investment. And so that gives you a little bit of a different look, especially looking at the Bay Area versus Southern California. It gives you a different look at how their performance was. Because when you look at Southern California, you can actually see a really big disparity between the percentage of their population that resides within Southern California and the percentage of the investment that they got. And so by those standards, the Bay Area actually performed quite a bit better, even though they had the same amount of investment. So then to highlight the SACOG region, a smaller share of the investment and a smaller share of the population. We have about 6.2% of the total state's population and received 4.7% of the total investment. So by that same standard, you could say we were slightly underinvested by about 1.5% if you have the idea that if we have 6% of the population, we should have about 6% of the investment as well. And so about half of the regions that I looked at were underinvested, so about 7 were underinvested, and the others were either more equal or overinvested like the Bay Area was. And then I also wanted to look at the disadvantaged community designation. That's a big piece of the cap and trade funds, and looking at how much money went into disadvantaged communities across the state. So to look first at the orange bar, this is the percentage of regional population that lives within disadvantaged communities in each region. And then if you look at the blue bar, that's the percentage of the regional investment that went into disadvantaged communities in each region. So I'll just highlight the SACOG region here. Our disadvantaged community designation was about 9% of the population. And then the amount that was invested in disadvantaged communities was about 55% of our overall cap and trade investment that we received. So first, to talk about the percentage of the population that lives in disadvantaged communities, that's how these regions are ordered. So from the ones that have the highest disadvantaged community designation to the lowest. So really, on the left side, you see a lot of the Central Valley counties with a much higher disadvantaged community designation, and then on the other side, you see more of the coastal regions. And SACOG is actually kind of more in line with some of the coastal regions in the sense that we have less than 10% designated as disadvantaged communities. And then in terms of our investment in disadvantaged communities, we are also kind of on the lower end. And one way to look at that is, since we have a lower designation of disadvantaged communities, we have less opportunities to invest in those communities.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Stern.
So before you leave that slide, can you expand on what's going on there with Merced?
Yeah, that's a big outlier in this data. So they have the largest designation for disadvantaged communities in the state and one of the smallest investments in disadvantaged communities, and I don't know why that is. One possible hypothesis is that a very impoverished county lacks capacity to plan and carry out these projects, and so maybe that was an issue.
And is this the normal way to measure, in your estimation, the normal way to kind of measure the investment, or is it just one way to measure the investment? And the reason I ask is there are a lot of, as you know, environmental justice advocacy organizations scattered across the state, And I just wondered if we're all kind of looking at the data in the same, using the same language, so to speak.
I haven't seen others do this kind of distribution analysis.
Okay.
So I haven't seen other analysis of it. I would say that this is a pretty straightforward way of basically really just looking at the total amount and slicing it in different ways.
So relative to this slide, I would strongly encourage you to share this information with the Environmental Justice Advisory Committee at ARB. I think this would be very eye-opening for a lot of those folks.
Okay, yeah, and I would also add that this is really in step with, I've heard from environmental justice advocacy or advocates, the idea that the SACOG region is under-designated with disadvantaged communities, so that the Cal-Enviro-Screen model did not accurately reflect our actual vulnerable communities, and so I think this this supports that idea,
right.
Or could at least.
And maybe just one follow-up question, but given attainment and non-attainment, since we're currently in attainment, even though it's a little bit close, is that part of what would trigger a larger population to fall into those categories?
The air quality numbers used in the latest version of Cal-Enviro-Screen were, I think, several years back. So I don't think it would reflect our current attainment status. It will show us in a better light than other parts of the state because it's a relative thing every year when you look at it as far as relatively. So, but there's many other factors there, and unfortunately, for one of the complaints the air quality community has had over the years is that Cal-Enviro-Screen sort of norms to a whole bunch of different things, and if you're spending money that really is going to get you air quality benefit, you should be looking at more things that are related to that. But be that as, I think that, I wanted to ask Evan on this. That percent investment, is that percent investment in our disabled communities? Because looking at this, it would seem to me that the SACOG region did a very good job of taking the money that they got and spending it in their disadvantaged regions. So
Right.
that's what I would get out of this. Did I answer your question, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, I think
Okay,
so.
all right.
It's a good question by the chair, and as Larry mentioned, there are a lot of other factors that feed into the Cal-Enviro-Screen mapping platform, but the one that continues to be the source of a lot of concern, not just for SACOG, but also for the Bay Area and other communities across the state, mostly in Northern California, continues to be this percentile ranking that is one of three factors that feeds into the platform that compares the socioeconomic condition of our disadvantaged communities to those in places like, Compton and Watts and LA, and we just have there's a lot of other very different socioeconomic variables between, the heart of LA and Northern California and Sacramento in particular. And so there are ongoing conversations at Cal EPA, because ARB doesn't manage Cal-Enviro-Screen, to have that adjusted and regionally normalize that based on a comparison just within our regions, not to other regions across the state.
And if I might also, you're going to get a presentation from Brendan Twigg, who's a lobbyist, in a minute. And what he's doing, working with us, is very important because there's a lot of bills in the legislature, some of which are further restricting this money into smaller pieces of the disadvantaged community areas. And that exacerbates the problem that Director Cerna just mentioned. So we're watching what's happening in the bills that are related to cap and trade funding very carefully, because they limit the percentage, then it further skews the amount of money that we have available here in our region.
Mr. Terry wanted to ask a question.
Just really quick, can you go back to the slide before this? Because just to put it in perspective, this is a guess, but I'm guessing that scalability is an issue with some of these. And so if there was one project in Merced and it cost X amount and either you had to fund the entire thing or it didn't happen,
Right.
you could see skews like this. Because if you look at their share comparatively to everybody else, it's not really as alarming as it is when you compare it to their percent of population.
And as we gather numbers over the years, this will norm better. We'll have better information, because some of the agencies were better at getting the money out quickly than other agencies.
Well, and we've
So-
seen this play out with funding in Yolo County for diesel engines or whatever, for the pumps and stuff like that, where the offset was that it was making our air cleaner, not theirs necessarily. So I just, as much as that is alarming, and I was going to ask the question before Supervisor Cerna did about Merced, when you put in perspective of their share, that could have been one project. And
Exactly. So it could have been one project that was not in a disadvantaged community, and that's all they were able to put forward. Okay, so I also wanted to zero in just to the SACOG region so you could see how things looked at a finer scale. So this is looking at the total investment within the region by county. So our total investment was about $23 million. You can see that most of that went into Sacramento. It's divided into these three categories that correspond with the categories that the state used to talk about the different ways that cap and trade funds are used. So the sustainable communities and transportation, energy efficiency and clean energy, and natural resources and waste diversion. And that scalability issue really comes into play here. You can see Yolo County that comes in second here. This chart is greatly impacted by the fact that they were the recipient of a Strategic Growth Council Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities grant for, I think, about $6.5 million. And so that whole blue bar consists of that one project. So Sacramento has more money and is also more diversified. And then Yuba, Placer, El Dorado, and Sutter received, as you can see, a much smaller amount of funding.
But I do think that speaks to one of the earlier points about being ready with projects and applying capacity to apply, and whether our region was truly prepared with both projects that were ready and also capacity to apply.
Certainly, that played into especially the Strategic Growth Council funding very strongly.
Question?
Yes, Director McGlashan.
Thank you. So the amount you gave us earlier in the presentation, the $498 million, and of which we received back $23 million. So that what we received back was not proportional to what we contributed. Is that accurate to say?
You mean what we contributed as part of the cap and trade?
The $498 million.
So the $498 million came from the overall cap and trade market in which industry is trading credits for carbon emission pollution. And so some of that did come from within our region, but there wasn't a particular share that we put into the program. It's based on this overall market of buying and selling carbon credits.
I'm trying to determine if what was awarded was proportional to what was invested for the SACOG region.
Evan, I think the question, going back to the one chart which said that Capital Region was fourth most funded region for GGRF, what you're saying is the total GGRF invested was 498, right? In the whole state, right. The numbers that you had. But really the relevant chart is the next chart, which showed that would be going back several charts. Really, to answer that question, this chart right here, I think, shows you sort of percent population, percent investment.
But it doesn't have a number.
No, but that percent investment was the $23 million. So if you're looking at that, we probably put in 35 or 40 million and got 20. Maybe we put in 30 million and got 23 million back, something like that.
So it was not proportional then?
It's not proportional, but it's not too skewed. And really, we have to look at this over a few more years to really know whether how it's norming. But this is just a report of where we are right now.
Thank you.
Would that be the answer?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Okay, and then I also looked at the regional investment that went into disadvantaged communities by county. So the blue bar either was located or benefited disadvantaged communities, and the orange bar were investments that were made outside of disadvantaged communities. And so, again, you can see in Yolo County that Strategic Growth Council grant did benefit a a disadvantaged community, and so that had a significant impact on the numbers that we're looking at here. Sacramento County, there were more investments outside of disadvantaged communities than within disadvantaged communities. But if you also look at the overall kind of 9% of disadvantaged community designation, that leaves a lot of area outside of that to invest in.
Real quick.
Yeah, go ahead, Director.
So fair to say, based on these numbers, that we are far exceeding the statutory floor on investment in disadvantaged communities, which is 25%.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay, and then zooming in even further, I just wanted to give you a few examples of programs that are going on now that have been implemented and are in progress in Sacramento County. So these first two are examples of kind of direct residential outreach type programs that are happening within disadvantaged communities. One is a $1 million grant to the Sacramento Tree Foundation to do planting and education in South Sacramento, and I also included the political districts that project falls within. Another example is a $2.5 million project coming from the Department of Water Resources to improve water and energy efficiency by giving appliances and rebates and such in targeted disadvantaged communities throughout Sacramento County, and that's the Regional Water Authority is doing that program. And then the transportation projects that went into Sacramento County, there's the program from Caltrans, the Low Carbon Transportation Operations Program. This is a program that runs by formula, so this was not competitively procured within the county. But we received 5 grants there, equaling about $660,000. 4 of them went to Sacramento Regional Transit, 1 to the city of Elk Grove to extend existing routes, increase transit frequency, do a Connect Card program, and these are located throughout the county. And then 1 grant for about $7 million through CalSTA, their transit and intercity.
Mr. Carr would like to speak.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to drill down a little bit on the disadvantaged communities. This project, for example, to refurbish the light rail cars, does that count as a program to assist a disadvantaged community?
That is a good question, and I cannot remember what the official designation was on that. For all the data that was released, they basically have a checkbox that says, yes, they were able to make the case that it benefits a disadvantaged community or not. My sense is that probably yes, but I would have to check their numbers on that.
The different funding streams have different rules for how they're done. For example, in the governor's budget, the ARB money we can access, all that money has to be spent in disadvantaged communities, 100% of that money. Depending on the different pot of money across the 12 agencies, and even within agencies, sometimes it's different as to how much has to go there. When you're getting block grants that go to, they probably don't have a requirement on that, although they may go back and check that later. But certainly the money we have available absolutely has to have that check mark. So it depends on the kind of money, which agency it's coming through as to what the rules are.
And we're still classifying disadvantaged communities by that original map that had the algorithms that left out a large number of
that is the map that they're
communities
using for
that we
all of
would
this.
consider to be disadvantaged.
And they will be updating that probably over the next year or two, and we'll have another bite at that apple.
And I mean, the chart is good to show that we are serving disadvantaged communities, but really are we? What I like to see are where the money actually went. In Sacramento to disadvantaged communities. What programs did we fund? Because frankly, Larry, I haven't seen any. And I see we have a program to plant some trees in Oak Park.
That program will go 100% into disadvantaged communities. All that tree money will go there.
Say again?
The tree money will all go to disadvantaged communities. All of those grants that, in fact,
disadvantaged communities identified by that original map.
Yes.
That left out whole sections. What I really like to see are where did what programs did the money for Sacramento, what programs did they serve in the disadvantaged communities? You have an example here of trees, you have an example of
Water Resources, Regional Water Authority.
That $2.5 million all has to be spent in disadvantaged communities.
Yeah, what I'd like to see is where to go, what program that.
Well, the people that are running that could give you the names of the families that got that money if you want it. But we'd have to go back to the Department of Water Resources and find out. That money is going through an organization that finds families who need upgrades in their homes and helps them do that. So there's specific families on the ground who got money from that program.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that agency can provide that information. We can help facilitate that if you want.
And Mr. Carr, maybe, because this is a thing that, from a standpoint of readiness, a lot of the jurisdictions, I think, weren't necessarily ready to apply and have applicants, whether housing projects or other things that were ready. I think that people are now paying a lot better attention to, or maybe more ready, but the various streams of funding, as Larry was noting, the transit programs are, I think, more pure air quality programs, and that's the RT one that started the conversation. But some of the disadvantaged community money, and maybe you want to talk about this, that flows through the Strategic Growth Council. It's very clear, and Director Cerna, I think, has been working on this from the Air Board standpoint, is that the system isn't necessarily fine-tuned yet, I think is probably the best way to put it. And there's a lot of people trying to push it towards being a better, more fair, accurate system. Is that, Mr. Stern, is that right?
Yeah, and it does go back, Director Carr, to your very accurate statement about the mapping platform still having, I think, in a lot of our opinions, weaknesses in terms of the data that feeds into it and what does it tell us about our own disadvantaged communities, where we all know anecdotally may not be congruent with what the state considers a disadvantaged community in our region or in our city or in our county. And that has to do, again, with the comparison to other disadvantaged communities across the state, not compared to within the region or within the county.
Well, if we're touting that we're investing so much in disadvantaged communities, I think it's a fair question to say, show us the beef. Where is it?
And we can, the agencies, that money is going there, has to be spent there. There's names, people, there's families that have upgrades. Yeah. It's addresses.
I mean, I can give you, I know we need to get through the presentation, but I've joined Director Guerra and Director Harris, for instance, just in the last few months on some solar projects for residents and their respective city council districts that happen to overlap with my supervisorial district, that are in disadvantaged communities that are actually receiving solar panels to, provide non-carbon producing electricity for their homes. So there are quite a few examples out there. It's not just tree planting, it's not just water projects, it's a lot of other things.
Energy efficiency for homes.
Well, I wouldn't be asking for an address. What I'd be asking for is solar project to put solar panels on X number of houses. Mm-hmm. Or refurbish X number of refrigerators or whatever. Mm-hmm. And if we are not to that point yet where we can articulate that, then I'm ready to wait till we get to that point and then have an audit of this program to see if this is really ground truth.
Right, and I think what you're hearing from our air pollution control officer is that because there's so many multiple agencies involved and different ways that the funds are either limited or more generally available for different projects, those agencies probably do keep that geographic information, and it's just a matter of going to those various agencies to acquire a map or a list of addresses, or I don't know that there's a singular audit out there that gives you that. I think it's probably going to be a little more legwork than that.
I'm sensing it would be labor intensive. That's why I'm suggesting that when we're at the point that these programs have matured, that we actually do an audit of them, hire an auditor or an investigator to go out and take a look and see if these things really happen.
Mr. Carr, and just because these are state programs, I don't think we have the authority to audit them. It would be the state auditor's office that would do that, but if we felt that, we could ask the Legislative Joint Audit Committee to request that audit if we got to that point. But at this point, Ms. Director, would you like to say something, Larry?
Yeah, I'm sure that there's many people asking that question, and I'm sure that there will be audits of the program. We can, at some level, respond to your question, and I'll talk to staff and investigate that, because the data that Evan used for this, some of these are websites that specifically give you addresses and exactly where them, and you go in and you've got the project name and the sponsor, and all, that information is in some cases right there on the website. So,
Mr. Starsky.
Yeah, just to Director Carr's question, it is a very well-developed program, especially the energy efficiency portion of it. So they'll go out, there are annual reports that they will produce the information as to who gets this, but the paperwork to apply and the paperwork for the subcontractor is extensive. So it's very trackable, it's auditable. In fact, I believe it is. This program has been in existence. The energy efficiency side of it has been in existence for a very long time. I consider it to be highly successful, and it's particularly adapted for disadvantaged communities. There are other programs available for those communities that aren't, but it's wildly successful in caulking windows, replacing windows, replacing appliances. Solar was a recent add to the program that people can put on their homes, but it's really been extremely effective. The Energy Commission has data that shows these programs have an immediate impact on energy usage in the state. So that information is all very readily available, and I believe it's actually required under the law for an annual report, and it's regularly audited. But the programs are successful. But I think the information's out there for you.
Yeah, I'm aware of the energy programs.
Yeah, you are.
The thing that draws my attention is the refurbishing of rail cars. Is that being counted as serving a disadvantaged community? And what other programs out there like that? How are we counting this?
And I think on that particular one, it comes to the RT board as well. So we can ask Regional Transit how they characterized it, but those are not disadvantaged community funds. Those are clean air funds to get people to, instead of drive, to use mass transit. So those are designated for rail and mass transit.
Yeah, I think the bus replacement programs may have some component of that, but depending on where they're replaced.
But we can ask RT that question.
Yeah, and that particular grant program is also for capital investment. So that's really kind of the target of what those monies are to go for. It's to renew infrastructure and make those types of investments. The other thing I would add is that I think there has been well, first of all, these programs are in very early stages of implementation, and I think there's a strong message from ARB and that they will really fulfill these requirements for a lot of project transparency and tracking and metrics on everything that's happening. So I think as the program goes on, we're going to see a lot more information about where specifically the money is going and what the outcomes of these different programs are. Okay, so just quickly to wrap up and circle back to that initial question of how did the Sacramento region do, and we've talked about this a lot already. So that the first point is that you can look at this and say we are slightly underinvested given the share of population that we have in the state. I also looked at that number just by county. So Sacramento County has 3.8% of the state population and received 2.8 of the cap and trade funds, so that's also slightly underinvested, although it is performing at a better level than the region as a whole. Again, the point about the disadvantaged community designation, that we do have a lower percentage of designation compared with other inland regions, and our investments into disadvantaged communities is kind of on the lower end of all the regions, but you also have to keep in mind the fact that we have a lower designation, so there's fewer opportunities to make those investments. And just to leave you with to think about in the question of what actions can improve the outcomes in the upcoming round of funding. Those agencies that have continuous appropriations are starting their process now and have their application process is open. Strategic Growth Council, I believe concept papers are due in the middle of March, and I know SACOG is working hard on coordinating programs there. And some of the programs that are that just got put into the budget in September will be coming online, I think, in the next 3 to 6 months or so. So that's all still coming up, and there's a lot of opportunities for us to improve our outcomes in the next round of funding. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, please call the next item.
The next
sorry. Mr. Guerra wanted to say something.
Yep. Before we end this, I wanted to, I think, not lose sight of the conversation that Director Cerna was pointing out. While we need to make sure that the money we are receiving goes directly to disadvantaged communities and that we're seeing the effectiveness, I think the bigger board conversation and message that I think this board needs to do is ensure that the metrics that the state is using, that we respond and give input to what the metrics that the state is using, so that we're not inappropriately being compared to apples and oranges for the state. And I think that's the we can fight over nickel and dime here, but the bigger picture is ensuring that we're competitive at a statewide level where the larger dollars are coming in.
And I would just add that this is a multi-front battle between SACOG, our jurisdictions, transit agencies, and so I think if we could coordinate across the board as a region, we would be much better off. But again, a lot of our jurisdictions weren't necessarily teed up and ready to take advantage of opportunities in the first round, and I think now it's gotten our attention. But Mr. Cerna and Mr. Carr.
Thank you.
Then Mr. Carr.
So to Director Guerra's comment, I know we can't act on this today. It's not agendized appropriately, but I would like to respectfully suggest to our chair and district council and our air pollution control officer that we consider either for the chair's signature with your signature, Larry, or perhaps if there's interest by all directors on this board, a letter that is drafted addressed to the Cal EPA Secretary Rodriguez, that explains some of the concern about the mapping platform. I've already submitted my own letter about a year ago expressing concern about the designation of disadvantaged communities in the county I help represent. And I think it would certainly help underscore the fact that there's some outstanding respectful concerns about the very fact that Director Guerra pointed out, is that we continue to be in part gauged against other disadvantaged communities, I would say somewhat unfairly across the state, that doesn't best position us to acquire and maximize as much resource base as we can to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but certainly meet our statutory requirements to spend money on projects and for the benefit of our constituents living in disadvantaged communities.
Okay, we'll take that as something to work on toward.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea, Mr. Carr. And then we do have to move on fairly soon. So,
when this program was being developed, you did very extensive outreach. We went out to community meetings, to neighborhood groups. We had a big community meeting at the Guild Theater. The distinct impression was left that people would actually see the benefit from the cap and trade money. And at the neighborhood meetings that I went to, there was the question was asked, what do you want to do with the cap and trade money? People gave you various ideas and things. Where we ended up was SMUD got a lot of money, the school district got a lot of money, RT got a lot of money. I think in order to give the people confidence that the money is being directed to their needs, there has to be a mechanism to fund local programs to help the nonprofits get around. They're spending an inordinate amount of money and driving clunkers around. And people have no way to get around in neighborhoods. And I think that's the type of thing, in addition to what we've been doing on this next round, we need to do. Make sure that people, where they are supported.
All right, thank you, Mr. Carr. Clerk, please call the next item.
The next item is item number 5, receive and file update on current legislative session.
Mr. Tuig, thank you for the wonderful job on the pledge.
That was a surprise, I'm sure.
We had to wake up sometime.
Yes. Two purposes of this. One was to give the board a reminder of the board directives for legislation, regulation, and policies, which was approved last year, which is what I use and staff uses as we develop policies and respond to legislation over the year. Generally, we will respond, support, and oppose bills based on this guidance. If bills come forward that are outside of those parameters, we'll come back to the board and get specific permission for that. Our work is greatly enhanced by the work of Brendan Tuig. He is our consultant that works on this. He's worked more than 10 years ago. He worked with the Cal State Legislature for more than a decade. He was a chief of staff there, managing strategy. He was a policy committee consultant, worked with the chair of the Assembly Natural Resources Committee, and he has done a great job working with CAPCOA for the last 10 years and then in our district since March of 2014. So I wanted to give him a chance to give you a quick summary of what we're seeing this year in the legislature.
Thank you, Mr. Executive Director, and also board members. Thank you for that nice introduction. My daughters will be delighted to find out that I had the honor of leading the pledge, so thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to be here and providing legislative advocacy for the district to help the district reach its clean air goals. I wanted to take just a moment to touch on a couple of major bills that I've had a hand in the last few years. In 2013, we worked on AB 8. On behalf of the California Air Pollution Control Officers Association. I was honored to lead the overall lobbying effort at the Capitol for a core coalition of over 30 disparate organizations that helped get that through. We had 100 total groups in support, one of which, of course, was the Air District. And that bill extended $2.3 billion in funding for clean transportation over a 9-year period. Of that, $675 million goes directly to air districts, and that's annually about $25 million for the Carl Moyer program, and then an additional $50 million in local AB 923 funding. The bill required a 2/3 vote, so you had to bring together members of both sides of the aisle, and it certainly wouldn't have happened without the work of all the members of the coalition and all the parties involved. So it was a pleasure to be a part of that. Another big item for air districts was just last year, which was SB 513, and that was a bill that you're likely familiar with, of course, but it made some important revisions and updates to the Carl Moyer program, allowed more leveraging of funding sources, allowed the Air Resources Board to adjust the cost effectiveness limits so that you could have a better opportunity now to fund new technologies, and it made a number of other important changes. Shifting to this year, I did want to touch on the big picture to give the board a context for what environment things are happening. The legislature is changing dramatically and has been for a number of years, but we're really starting to see the effects of the change in the term limits law, which in the Assembly, used to be that you could only serve 3 2-year terms for Assembly members. In the Senate, it was 2 4-year terms. And now what has happened is, with the change in term limits to 12-year, what is being kind of coined as 12-year members, these are now, legislators are now allowed to serve 12 years, should they be reelected, of course, every time. 12 years total in either house of the legislature. And I think in this year, there's about 16 seats that will be up in November for 12-year members. And so there's 14 of those 16 or members that were subject to the old term limits law, and then 2 of those folks are members, are running for the Senate. But those 14 members were subject to the old law, and now after that changeover, we'll have 14 or 16 new members that can serve 12 years. And then beyond that, after November, we now have, we won't have any open seats in the Assembly until 2024. So you're seeing a legislature that is, provided people don't run for something else or, decide to resign their seat. I mean, of course that can happen, but no scheduled open seats until 2024. And so that'll mean all of the members that are there for or most of the members are going to be there for the long haul. In the Senate, that change has been, the change over to 12-year members is a little more gradual. In 2016, we're going to have 6 open seats. In 2018, 6 more. In 2020, 7 more. And then in 2022, there's a handful of seats. So the change is a little slower, but we're also seeing changes in sort of how both houses are run. For example, we're seeing a lot more legislative oversight. We're seeing members, I think you could say anecdotally, it feels like they're taking a much longer view. The legislature is willing, when I say legislative oversight, getting into sort of what the agencies are doing, the different departments, and conducting more extensive reviews, which I think is it's a good thing for the institution and the state. I wanted to also speak to some of the leadership changes that are happening. The Assemblymember Rendon is now the Speaker-elect. He's from the Southern California area, and he'll be taking over as Speaker on March 7th. He is one of the 12-year members, so he'll have the opportunity to be to serve almost 9 years, which, if he fills that whole time as Speaker, would make him the longest-serving Speaker since Speaker Willie Brown, who ended his 15-year run in the mid-'90s. And then with the new Speaker, it's certain that we'll see some key committee changes, both at the chair level and then with the membership of various committees. The new Speaker has also said that he won't carry bills, he won't author bills, and then he also wants to have the committee chairs take a more of a leadership role in those in the policymaking process. And I think that's a function of what I talked about before too, is that you see the members are going to be there longer, and so the new Speaker is recognizing that. There's also Assemblymember Perea was the chair of the Assembly Democratic Moderate Caucus, and he resigned his seat at the end of last year. That seat will be filled in a special election in April, but I mention it because Assemblymember Jim Cooper, who is a former board member, was elected by the caucus, or tapped by the Moderate Caucus, Democratic Caucus, to be one of the co-chairs, along with Assemblymember Rudy Salas from the Central Valley. A couple of leadership changes for on the Republican side. Assemblymember Chad Mays from Yucca Valley, the desert area, who's a 12-year member, took over as the Republican leader in the Assembly, and at the end of last year, the Senate Minority Caucus elected Senator Jean Fuller from Bakersfield, and she'll be termed out in 2018. Shifting to this year in the state budget, I did want to speak to some of the issues related to cap and trade, which is clearly an area of focus for the board. Last year, there was a continuous appropriation part of the cap and trade plan that went out. And so that's 60% of the funding that both the legislature and the governor have agreed to. There's 4 pots of funding, like high-speed rail, affordable housing and sustainable communities, transit and intercity rail capital, and then also transit operations. So that pot of money went out last year. The legislature did not come to agreement on the remaining 40% that they have to decide what to do with every year. And so what the governor has proposed is folding that about approximately $800 million into this year's cap and trade plan, which is totals $3.1 billion. I just wanted to mention a few things that may be of interest to the board related to that plan. There's $460 million that would go to the Air Resources Board for low carbon transportation. So that would be for rebates for zero emission cars and hybrid and zero emission trucks and buses. So this is the Clean Vehicle Rebate Project and also the Hybrid Vehicle Incentive Program. Also $150 million for healthy forests. CAL FIRE would be allocated $150 million. This would be for a variety of activities to improve forest carbon sequestration and also reduce wild land forest fire fuels to avoid emissions associated with wildfires. And then funds could also be used to support biomass. And so that program will actually combine some existing programs for certain types of forestry, health activities such as reforestation and forest pest control activities. So there's also $40 million, importantly, for the Black Carbon Wood Smoke Reduction Program. And so I know the district is familiar. It's going to be a new statewide program modeled after some local programs like your successful program here at the district. So there'll be an opportunity for districts to access that funding. And then there's also a $100 million local climate program, and that would go to the Strategic Growth Council for integrated local projects for the state's top 5% of disadvantaged communities. So on your discussion, that the Sacramento region would likely, as proposed, see very little of that money for its disadvantaged communities. And then just on the bills, the bill deadline was February 19th. Most bills are introduced in the few days leading up to the deadline, so we're still in the process of analyzing and prioritizing measures. But I can tell you that there's a significant number of bills that spend cap and trade money. Everybody's got a lot of folks have proposals on how they think those dollars should be spent. There's a number that address how much cap and trade funding goes to disadvantaged communities. And that also aim to assist disadvantaged communities in other ways as well. So there are bills that change those percentages. About 10% of projects need to be spent located in a disadvantaged community and 25% to benefit. So there's a lot of discussion on those issues, and there will be this year in the legislature. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions.
Nobody signed up to speak. Thank you very much for your work.
Okay.
And we look forward to winning much more cap and trade money for the region with your help.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, next item.
Next item is item number 6, adopt a resolution amending the fiscal year 15-16 Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District approved budget and authorizing the Executive Director, Air Pollution Control Officer to implement the approved budget adjustments.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Hansen and members of the Board of Directors. I'm sensitive. I have 2 presentations to get through, and I'm sensitive to your time. So with the consent of the chair, I'll move through the presentations a little more quickly than I had otherwise planned.
I think you won't get an objection
and
from us.
just be available for questions at the end. Fortunately, on this first presentation, we did have a chance to brief the subcommittee of the budget and personnel, so they have seen these numbers, and we've taken comments and reacted to those. So this morning, I would just like to kick off the FY 16-17 budget development process process with a mid-year review where we are and get the budget adjusted a little bit so we have a good platform to build the 17 budget. We will be, for that timeline, we will be meeting with the subcommittee of the board, the Personnel and Budget Subcommittee, next month in March to preview the 17 budget. And then we will be bringing back that proposed budget to this board in April and looking for a final approval of that budget in May. So that's our timeline. So this is just where are we today on the current year. I'll talk about some major variances, a changing business need based on our system integration project, probably breeze right through the schedules and get to the proposed amendments. So overall, good news story. We are finishing under budget. For the board's sake, I did want to very quickly articulate that we have 3 distinct funds that we manage here at the district. One is our operating, or what we commonly call our general fund. The other is the Covell Building Fund, which is our administrative building. The funds are managed separately. And the last one, emissions technology, where you will see a very large proposed amendment in this budget, is strictly our funds for the incentive projects that we have. So no operating budget in there, no staff, just professional services contracts for those incentive funds. We're doing great on salary savings. We've had some turnover in the organization, some retirement, so we have some savings there, about $300,000. Classically, we've had savings in professional services for the multiple contracts we manage, clean, spare the air, other types of things. We're also seeing some savings there. These are the variances. We mostly related to grant activity and a little bit to capital projects. We had 2 grants come in that we did not anticipate at the time of budgeting last year, which is good news. So we have about $800,000 there that we would like to adjust the budget to recognize those incoming flows of dollars. We also received a community air toxics grant. We received the full amount, and we just wanted to adjust that down to the amount we expect to expend this year. It's a reimbursable grant, fully reimbursable. It's not changing the amount, just adjusting our budget to what we reflect to expend this year. The big one is this next one. The GMRP, or our goods movement one, we had anticipated receiving $10.5 million in this year. It's actually coming in after the end of the fiscal year. We will get that. It's just coming in next year. So we want to back out that revenue. This is in our emissions technology fund. It's all incentive dollars. We'll back that out, and both of the revenues and the expenditures, so it's a pretty neutral impact to our overall budget. And then the air monitoring station, we're taking a little bit longer view on the replacement of multiple air monitoring stations that we have. So we are putting out a procurement to get a construction manager on board. That's delayed some of our projects, so we're not going to do that project this year and just want to remove it from the capital projects. The last one is we're reclassifying amounts of the system integration project does qualify as capitalizable, so we're moving it from a different kind of expenditure down into the capital projects. So it's a net zero move. It's just reclassifying it so we can capitalize that over time. So that's the nature of the major changes there. The one position change that we are requesting is an add delete, so we would not increase the number of employees at the district, but we would change the classification of one, and it's related to our technology. With the implementation of all these new business processes and applications, it's changing the nature, the lay of the land of the district, and we need a little more talent in that capacity in the areas of software management, project management, and looking at our future technology needs. So we're requesting that we change a current position, which is Information Technology Administrator, to an Information Technology Manager, which is where we would be able to, it's one step up. It is a vacancy. We had a retirement of the administrator, so we're taking advantage of that. We've held that vacant for about 5 months, and we would like to move forward with that manager position. These are the numbers. You have them in your reports. I won't spend time on it, reflecting the proposed amendments we're requesting. That's in the operating fund. We are making no changes. We are coming in under budget on the building fund, but we are not requesting to make any changes to that budget. And then here's where you'll see that big $9-10 million adjustment in the emissions technology for that grant, the GMRP grant that's coming in next year. So with that, we respectfully request that the board approve the proposed amendments. This is what it looks like. This is the actual new value. So we were at $45.9 million. It would go to $35.7, which is an adjustment of $10 million. and it would add the one position and delete the other position for a net zero change to our bottom line. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on the budget.
I don't see any members of the board signed up to speak.
Move the staff recommendation for the
Second.
budget amendments.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, abstain, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and I am still Jamil Moons and still the administrative manager here, and I have the pleasure of giving you a brief update on the systems integration project, which is what I was just talking about in the changing staffing requirements. And I think we need to get our presentation up here. There we go. Okay. Very quickly, I will remind you of the various projects we have going on in the system integration effort and some related timelines. It's pretty exciting. We're kicked off and we're going with this, but there's a lot of work ahead, a couple of years worth of work. So quickly, the line of business application is going to be the new application to manage all of our core operational activities, issuing permits, doing violations, the asbestos work we do. It'll integrate with our mobile sources. So that's the application that'll house that. This will be our primary administrative and finance application. It's often referred to as an ERP. And that is going to manage our accounts payables, receivables, our general ledger, and we're looking forward to the procurement module that we will be getting in that as well. And it will be integrated with a SharePoint implementation. And the SharePoint is a platform upon which we are building a new district website, an intranet site for the district, which we formerly have not had, collaboration sites, and workflow, project management, some other functionality that this application provides the district. The next project is the meeting management software. We have mentioned that in the past. We are looking to get an application to automate our board process, our public meeting process. And so that will be integrated into all of this and into our website. And then Skype for Business, which is a collaboration tool for better communication between members of the staff, as well as video conferencing options, which we are taking advantage of a lot more than traveling and collaborating with our partners. All of that is being managed by a company that we retained to provide project management services to make sure we do this well and we do it right and we do it on time. This is the vision of what it'll look like. You will see this. You've seen this before, and it's 3 integrated databases that share information, and the product is improvements in transparency, improvements in self-service, improvements in efficiency and accuracy, all as a result of the automation and the reduction of redundant and manual business processes. Quick on the timelines, there is an error in your report. It said that February 28th we kick off SharePoint. It was actually January 28th that we kicked off SharePoint. So that's well underway. We have consultants on site. They're there several times a week. Our staff is busily working on that. We hope to go live with our new intranet by the end of the fiscal year. Meanwhile, we're getting the RFPs out for the ERP solution and the line of business solution. And the meeting management software is being evaluated, and we'll make a decision on that in the next week. These are some dependencies from the legacy website. We have content, files, board items, and then our regular outside file share server system. We're going to have to do some migrating over of all the content, all the files to the SharePoint website, but then some will be taken off. So we're restructuring, reorganizing with this process. And I'd spend a little more time on this, but I think you get the idea. One of the key dependencies is the board items. Right now, our board items are all on our current website. We will be moving that to the new board software. It'll still present on our website, but it'll be in a separate application. So we need to get that done and have that go live before we go live with the website. Otherwise, we have this redundancy. We've got to move it over to the website, then onto the new technology. We don't want to do that. So that's a timeline we're working against. We also have 3 boards, the hearing board, this board of directors, and the Sacramento Valley Basin Control Council. I think I got that right. We host there many members from various districts and counties sit on that, and our district hosts that, so we will also be moving that to this new website. So with that is an update, and we hope to bring that to you every few months to let you know how we're going on that project.
Excellent work, Jamil. I don't see any directors signed up to speak, so thank you for your time and all your hard work. Madam Clerk, please call the final item.
Public address this board on matters not on the agenda.
Do we have anyone signed up to speak?
Yes.
Will you please read the name?
Jerry Sprague has
Mr.
signed.
Sprague.
The reason that one note to the chairman, you might read the back of your agenda and read the testimony and what it says, so the next time you can address it correctly. I wanted to make my points on item number 2 on the consent. I don't know what kind of a trophy I'd give. I'd rather give it to the county or the Air Quality Board, but in 2000, how do we get the view on this thing?
Would you like the overhead?
Yes.
Madam Clerk, please turn on the overhead. It's on the table next to you, to your right. You put it face up. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. In March of 2000, I was issued an NOV, which is the reason I'm here today. 16 years ago, I was issued this NOV on the property in Fair Oaks that all of the board members, the county supervisors, as few of the air quality people are aware of. From that, and part of that NOV, it calls under Section Health and Safety Code. It told me that I could be fined up to $1,000. They've turned this NOV into a judgment of $742,000. And with interest, it's been what you have in your packet today, your money you need to invest of $300,000. That $300,000 at 10, well, with interest, it's over $1 million. So that $300,000, the money that you just received on the sale of the property, that just about is equal to the interest. So you have done very well in your investments. Now the county, they are competitors in my analogy. They use SMUD to turn the power off to take the parking lot of this particular property. So I'm not sure who would win the award for being the achiever of best investments. Now, this thing would have never been here. I would have never been on the carpet for an air quality pollution thing. But it started way back when air quality was covering up for the contractors on the levee work. They were polluting the air with silica, which is under the same agent list in Prop 65 as asbestos. Roberta McGlishan's husband was in on that, representing me with the Nagley firm. They took pictures of this going on. At the time, I wasn't aware of Prop 65, and I don't think Roberta's husband was as well. The last thing I'm going to mention is I put in a public records request some 2 months ago, and I'm being stonewalled with not receiving any of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sprague. Madam Clerk, we have no one else signed up to speak?
No.
All right. I adjourn this meeting.